So in front of us on screen here, we can see I've got a spreadsheet called forwardprice.xlsb. This is literally just an empty spreadsheet. We're going to press Alt and F11 to open up the Visual Basic Editor. And the first thing we're going to do is to give the VBA project a sensible name. Remember how to do this? We click on the VBA project, we go to VBA project properties, and then we change the project name. And let's call it Forward Price Project. Now that we've changed the project name, we're going to add a module to the project. We right click on the Microsoft Excel objects, go to Insert Module, and then once we've inserted this module, we're going to give that a sensible name as well. We select the module from the Project Explorer tree. We press on the F4 key to bring up the Properties pane. And then in the name field, we're going to just change the name to M Forward Price. And then we're just going to close down the Properties pane to give us a bit more space. So you can see now we just have a blank module and there's nothing in the code window. We're going to start by declaring a function. We will say public function forward price. And notice that when we press enter, it completes the end function for us. So we have a kind of a whole function wrapper. And the forward price function is going to take in a number of inputs. These are input arguments. We're going to require a spot price, a start time, and the start time is in years. We're going to require an expiry time, that's also in years. We're also going to require a risk-free interest rate and a dividend rate. Okay, we save that. Click on the compile button and we see there's no problem so far. The first variable that we are going to use is an intermediate variable, and this is for the duration in years, and it's just a simple difference between the start time and the expiry time. The second variable we are going to use is what's called the cost of carry, and that's just a difference between the risk-free rate and the dividend rate. So two very simple variables, two very simple calculations. And we're just going to start by declaring these using the dim keyword. So dim duration years and dim cost of carry. Then we'll actually perform the calculations for these. So if we use duration years, and you see the way I just did that there, I started out just by typing out part of the variable name, DUR. Then I held down the control key and I pressed the space bar. And when I do that, it auto completes the rest of the variable name. Now, if there are multiple variable names which fit the first few letters, it will bring you an IntelliSense drop down so that you can select the variable that you want to use. Let's say duration years equals expiry time in years. And you can see in this case, when I did EXP, I used control and the spacebar, and this time I got the IntelliSense dropdown, which allows me to select expiry time in years. Then I can press the tab key, and that completes the variable name for me. And then we're going to say minus start time in years, and the cost of carry equals risk-free rate minus the dividend rate. And the final part of this calculation is for the forward price, and that equals the spot price multiplied by exponentiation of cost of carry times duration in years. Okay, we save that and we compile it. So what we've done here is very, very simple. We've used the dim keyword to declare two variables within our function forward price. Now when we do it this way, just by using the dim keyword alone, what actually happens is that Visual Basic will create variables of what's known as the variant data type. And then later on in the code, when those variables actually obtain a value, it will decide on exactly what data type they should have and how they should behave. Now, to actually see this in action, let's start by going back to our spreadsheet and let's build an example into our spreadsheet. Let's say spot price. We'll start with a spot price of 10. We'll start with a start time of 1, an expiry time of 3, a risk-free rate of, let's say, 5%, and a dividend rate of, let's say, 3%. And then we're going to calculate our forward price from these, and we'll say equals forward. Now we can see when we type the FORW word, we get a function pop-up which allows us to select forward price. Okay, press the tab key, it completes the word and opens up the brackets. Now for the forward price, we want the spot price to be this, we want the start time to be this, we want the expiry time to be this, we want the risk-free rate to be this, and we want the dividend rate to be this. You can see when we perform the calculations, we get a forward price of 10.41. Okay, now to see what's happening with our variables, let's go back to our code, and I'm going to put in a breakpoint on this line of code here. That means when we've reached that line of code, we're actually going to stop the execution, we're going to drop into break mode, and we'll be able to examine each of these variables. Okay, we go back to our cell, we use the F2 key, and then we press enter, and then we hit the breakpoint. So the execution has now stopped just before we execute this line of code. We can go view, locals window, and that'll show us all of the available variables that are currently in scope. And we can see each of the variables passed in as input arguments, such as the spot price, the start time, the expiry time. They are all variants with another subtype. And we can see that what we've defined inside our function, the duration in years and the cost of carry, these are assigned a variant data type, and they are currently empty. And the reason they are empty is before this line of code, before we execute this line of code, Visual Basic has not yet decided what specific data type they should hold. So it's waiting until they actually get a value or we actually do something with them. We use the F8 key. And we can see when we use the F8 key, it's now executed this line of code here. And now that it's executed this line of code, it knows that duration in years should be more like a double data type. So it's got variant/double. We do the same with the cost of carry, using the F8 key. And we'll see again the same thing happens with the cost of carry. And we can use the F8 key again just to exit the function. And we can see that the forward price, just before we actually end the function and exit, also has a variant with a subtype double. So this is what happens when we just use the dim keyword on its own. Our variables are declared, but they're declared as a variant. So let's just finish that execution with the F5 key. And close down the locals window.